Hello, BookTube, and welcome to day 4 of Litmas, the literary event of the season, created by Adrian at Stripcover Lit, in which, day by day, in an inexorable crawl to Christmas, we talk about our favorite aspects of literature, with guideposts provided by our amiable host. And today's guidepost is your favorite novel. Because Adrian likes to make things difficult. Your favorite novel. How on earth am I supposed to say my favorite novel? I was thinking about it. Again, I was looking at my books. I was wandering around my bookshelves. And I was thinking, do you have any idea how many novels you have read in your life? And I don't. I don't have any idea. Especially since, as I mentioned the other day, I'm a big fan of genre fiction. So science fiction, murder mysteries, romance novels, westerns, in unending supplies, in unending supplies. In addition to all of, the contemporary literature of the day and all of the classics of the Western canon and the Eastern canon as well. I have no idea how many novels I've read. Of course, no matter how much I might love history or biography, we all have to admit the novel is the literary form of all our lives. It has, since its advent, completely dominated not just literature, but literary thinking. So that even people who aren't writing novels are thinking about novels. But I was trying to winnow it down, of course, for this video, and come up with, do the thing justice and come up with a number one candidate. And I can't do it. I tried real hard to come up with my equivalent. I'm sure by now all of you have seen Adrian's video on his own pick, which is no big surprise for his channel, Fight Club. And he does a great job of describing all the different things that novel is for him and all the different things it has been for him in the past that have made it, that iconic number one status. That might not be permanent, but is definitely true now. And I was thinking, well, come on, surely there's a novel that does that for you, and there isn't a single one novel that does that for me. There are works of nonfiction, there are works in the classics that kind of sort of come close, but no. No. So since I couldn't do that, I started thinking just by century, to try and narrow it down there and come up with at least, I have a small list of my favorite novels. I couldn't on any given day say which one of them beats all the others, except for maybe one exception, which I'll get to at the end. But for the 21st century, we're of course, we've got a toehold in the 21st century now. We're almost 20 years in to the 20th century. So for the 20th century, I can sort of look at the literature that's appeared so far. I'm going to do my best to live for most of the 21st century. Who knows how much more I'll see. But in the 21st century so far, two novels have really stood out for me. Two novels I've thought were not only excellent, because, we live in an embarrassment of riches literature-wise these days. Excellent literature is everywhere. In a way that wasn't true in, for instance, the 18th century or the 17th century, when, it was still the province of a smaller percentage of the population. Nowadays, as I say all the time, and as I used to say to my writing classes all the time, nowadays, technology allows everyone to be a writer. And everyone has a different viewpoint, and wild, untutored genius exists in large numbers of people. So the more people have the technology to sit down and write a novel, their novel, the better. And that's definitely true. In the 21st century, you've got great novels everywhere. But for me, in the 21st century, in terms of just durability, in terms of going back and rereading them and enjoying them, I narrowed it down to two. One of them will be very predictable for people who've watched this channel, and that's Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, her novel about Thomas Cromwell in the court of Henry VIII. That I loved it from the first minute that I saw an excerpt of it in a literary journal, and then the book came out, and I loved it. I've reread it and loved it. I've studied it, hammered away at it. I love it. And the other one isn't anything I've talked about on this channel so far, and that's the children's book by A.S. Byatt, who is famous for the novel Possession, which I thought leaned rather too heavily on its structural, on the gimmicks of its structure, whereas the children's book is a straightforward narrative and is incredible. Just an amazing work. It has stuck with me just relentlessly since I first read it, and then reread it years ago in the... sorry, I'm distracted by my puppy. I want to make sure that she's behaving herself, and of course she's not. Don't do that. Don't look for things to destroy. You're not supposed to be destroying anything. Oh, anyway, maybe we'll get through the video. So those are the two for the 21st century. I can't really pick between the two of them, but they stand out for me ahead of all the others. And then there's the 20th century, and I came up with three. Frida, cut it out. Don't do that. She's doing the equivalent of what you would do if you were looking at the books on my shelf. She's hungrily looking around, but not to read. She's looking for one to pick out and destroy. Anyway, for the 20th century, I came up with three novels. Three that stand out for me, that I love, that I keep going back to, and that strike me as better. It's certainly my favorites for that century. And the first one of those is Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson, which she's gone on to bigger and more textured and more complex novels, but that one does it for me. Absolutely. And the other two would be The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton and To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. And I'm just now noticing that all those books have the word house in the title. Not sure what that means, if anything. But those three novels for the 20th century just... for me, they blow away all the others. They're the ones that I keep coming back to. Probably especially The House of Mirth, but the other two as well. Just I could not possibly single out one of those three as my favorite of the three, let alone of the whole century. And then if we move on to the 19th century, only two novels really. I mean, I thought about it. I went through the list. I went through all those Penguin classics. I thought about it long and hard, and narrowed it down to two. In the 19th century, I think, was the highlight for the novel. I think the 19th century was a weird confluence of literary genius in all genres. I don't know what explains it, and I don't think that any century in human history comes close. It always bothers me when people don't realize that, or when they seem to want to elevate the Italian Renaissance or something like that over the age that gave us. Well, anyway, for the 19th century, I boiled it down to two, and of course, one of them is Pride and Prejudice. I cannot do without Pride and Prejudice. I can't imagine my mental furniture without that novel. I love it so much. I reread it far more often than I should, considering how much of it I know by heart. But in the 19th century, for me, as heretical as it will sound, and I'm sure that it will earn me the ire of my fellow Janeites, for me, the greatest novel of the 19th century, my favorite novel of the 19th century, the inexhaustible novel of the 19th century, and I think one of the greatest novels ever written, is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I've talked about it briefly on this channel before, and I could go on and on and on. Eliot's novels, for me, are not a tapestry of universal successes, let's put it that way. I know that some of you love some other Eliot books to distraction. No names, mind you, and no titles either. But I think, for me, Middlemarch is the purest distillation of her genius. Not just her philosophical and intellectual genius, but unlike a lot of her other books, also her dramatic genius. It's the novel that is the most successful of her novels as a novel, I think. But I think it's inexhaustible. I love it. I just love it. And, you know, in each one of these cases, the 21st century, the 20th century, the 19th century, I was thinking, well, okay, but you're supposed to pick just one. Litmas was created by Adrian. He gets to call the tune, and he says, pick your favorite novel. and I can't really do it, but if I had to pick just one novel out of all the ones that I've read, it would be this one. It would be The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu. It's 1,000 years old. It's 1,000 pages long. It doesn't really have a plot. It more than a plot. It has a large group of focal characters, and it just follows them throughout the various vicissitudes of their lives. But the main character is Genji himself, and we follow him, this beautiful buffoon, through one amorous adventure after another, one amazing moment of insight, fatuous insight after another, and also through political turmoil. And it's a weird book. It's in many ways an off-putting book, and I think an endlessly beautiful book. I hate to narrow this down to just one, especially when some of the other books that I've mentioned, oh my God, how am I supposed to say anything about against Pride and Prejudice? How am I supposed to put anything above? The House of Mirth is so brilliant, so brutal and brilliant. But if I have to give the top spot to one book and one book only, if I have to say my favorite novel, just period, it would be this. It would be The Tale of Genji. So that was tough for me. This day of Litmas was tough for me. And as usual, I'm greatly looking forward to what all the rest of you do. But I'm going to call it for now, and we'll move on to the next day of Litmas, which is utterly fascinating. It's a classic, Adrian. It's haiku. Your favorite haiku. And these prompts are coming at just the worst time for me. I am absolutely buried in work, buried in it, where it's not so much the huge amount of writing that I have to do, although I do have a huge amount of writing to do. It's not so much that. It's the huge amount of reading that I have to do in order to do the writing. It's like the diesel-powered chairlift at some great ski resort. You're sitting there and you're going up forever and ever and ever. And there's a smell of fumes in the air, and there's a grinding noise, and it stops every once in a while during a tough passage, and eventually you're going to get there. And what's it all for? It's all for the 20-minute downhill slalom that's the closest thing a human being can come to flying. And that's what writing is for me. That's what it feels like for me, but it takes forever to get there. When I've got to deal with, especially, scholarly works of nonfiction where, yes, I've only got 1,000 words, but in a couple of the cases that we're talking about here, my 1,000 words will be the only 1,000 words of a review that this thing gets outside of academic circles. So I have to know the subject really well. I can't let the side down. I can't make a fool of myself or my editor, which means I've got to retrace the scholar's steps as much as I can. I've got to weigh and then sift every single claim in the books. It takes time to do. It takes time to do all that. And once I've done all that, then I can say, okay, I can lift up the MacBook lid and fly. But not until then. So it takes just an enormous amount of time, which is why Litmas is both a blessing and a curse, because it's coming at the worst time. For these challenges are all fascinating. I want to devote more time to them, and that fascination is the good part. But the bad part is that I am devoting time to them that I don't have, that I can't spare, because unlike everything else that's dragging at my time, Adrian's event is not paying me anything. Anyway, I'm looking forward to all of your videos for Litmas. I really wish that if I had been thinking instead of hardly bustling for work, I would have done a lot to cry this up ahead of time. I wish that Adrian had announced it earlier. I wish that I had urged you all to do it earlier, because this is fascinating fun. So I'm looking forward to all of your videos, and especially tomorrow for haiku. But I'm gonna come back then. But I don't know. I filmed a video, an extra mail haul yesterday. I can probably upload that as well. I'll probably upload that as well. But I don't know what else I'll do. I really don't. Unlike my usual where, you know, the beginning of the day, I'm thinking, oh, I've got 6 or 7 different video ideas I can think of to do today. Unlike that, I'm thinking, oh my God, what's the least I can do before I get back to work, which feels terrible. That's not how BookTube's supposed to be. For me, it's supposed to be fun, the total fun highlight of the day. So we'll get through this hairy period, and then we'll be fine. But in the meantime, I'll upload that mail haul, because I don't want you to miss a mail haul, and I'll upload this video, and then we'll move on. But the horrible prediction is that my Litmas haiku video might be the only thing I get time to do tomorrow. I'm hoping that all these things clear out by midweek. I'd hope so, but we'll be facing other things. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for there with the #1 spot going to Genji, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.